Hi, this is Anna Crowe with the Get Real podcast, where CEOs, CMOs, and communications experts share their real advice. It's 6 questions in 9 minutes because we get to it real fast. So let's get to it. Excited to introduce today's guest. In a few sentences, can you tell us who you are and what you do?
Sure, absolutely. My name's Gerald Parsons, and I'm the CEO of Life Languages International, and we are a communication analysis firm, about 30 years old, and we work with companies and organizations to help them with their communication internally and externally.
Wonderful. Well, it's so great to meet you, Gerald, and thanks so much for being on today.
Sure, my pleasure.
What would you say is the best thing about being a leader in your industry?
Well, there's so many great things, but I think the thing that is the most meaningful to me is to actually watch cultural communication changes within organizations. When you start teaching them how to bridge communication gaps, and it really just increases engagement, it reduces conflict, and just a myriad of other things. So that's probably the most heartening thing for me, is to actually see how the process that we provide really makes a cultural difference within their organization.
I love that. And, obviously that's a huge topic, and you're in the world of communications, and part of that is creating a connection. So my next question is really about that. I hear from other successful executives and leaders that creating authentic connections, whether it's your customers or your team members, can be challenging with all the noise today. Yeah. What's your take on that?
Well, here's what has been, in my experience, has been successful for me. Rather than always asking for something, you work at really trying to become a trusted advisor with those that you're trying to work with, and I have found that it's more meaningful and more successful in the long term if you start with a give instead of an ask. Mm-hmm. And so I always do that. I'm always interested in trying to help somebody first, serve somebody first, and through that you build a trust relationship. And there's just way too many things out there that can get us off the rails and distract us, and there's too many other folks out there that are not exactly trying to do it right. And so you really have to work at becoming a trusted advisor with those that you're trying to serve. And if we flip the script and think about it in a servant's perspective, so what can I do to help you, then that bridge becomes quickly closed, and then obviously doors can open for you. So that's kind of my plan.
I love that, and you're so right. The trust forming and the trust building is essential, and those connections. We can't create trust, in my opinion, without having those genuine connections and conversations, and approaching it from a "what can I do for you" mentality. So I love that. Yeah, and it's great advice, and I'd love to see if there's any other real advice that you can share with other leaders.
Sure. There's 3 things that I kind of work by, and the first one is to become an effective listener. Most people want to get their sales pitch out, or most people want to tell you, their elevator pitch or those kinds of things. Then rather than do that, I'm going to try to be an effective listener. I want to hear what they're really saying, and I'm going to try to understand a little more effectively by listening for cues and clues that people will literally give you. They want to communicate, but so many people fail at communication because they don't start with listening. Mm-hmm. And so being an effective listener is the first thing. The second thing is and this may not even be a word, I don't know, being an effective understander.
It's a new word.
Yeah, so we're going to coin that. Be an effective understander. When you listen to people, then try to understand their perspective. And because if you can understand where they're coming from, or if you can kind of not put people in a box, but if you can kind of get them outside of a box, and you can look and say, okay, from this perspective, I can see that you may have this challenge or this challenge or this challenge. And if I have a solution for you, would you be open to hearing it? And rather than say, hey man, I can do this for you and I can do that. There's too much of that out there, and there's a lot of promises with no proof. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so be an effective understander, and then be an effective communicator. So when you're given the chance, if somebody asks you, if you're given the chance to communicate, then have something effective to say that will bolster that trust factor, because you're always trying to circle back to that trust factor. Is what I am about to say going to help bridge that gap of honesty and integrity and character to who I'm trying to work with? Because if it doesn't, then you're just better off not saying anything, right? So be an effective listener, understander, and communicator. Those three things will get you a lot further down the road than anything else.
I love that. That's such great advice. And I think, you really hit the nail on the head with that effective/active listening and understanding. And a lot of people talk for the sake of talking. So which kind of hits on your last point. So that's great advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Before we get to our final and more of a fun question, what other successful high-level executives such as yourself would you like to give a shout out to, or think should be on this podcast?
Oh yeah, I've got some people that I'd really like to get. No, I'm kidding. One of my clients is such an effective leader. His name is Tom Dolfe, and he's the CEO of a company in Fort Worth called Property Damage Appraisers. Tom is an amazing leader. Uses our company, obviously, to build that communication culture. To his own credit, he as a leader saw that he was really suffering from high turnover rates, and everybody got 15 minutes to come in and say, what would you do? And our 15 minutes turned into 2 hours. And Tom is really taking our process, our communication IQ process, and making it a cultural norm within his company. And his turnover rates have dropped in half. Wow. And so Tom is a great one, PDA. And then my buddy Rich Russo. Rich was the global director of operations for Korn Ferry, and he got downsized recently, but he's so successful as a consultant and a trusted advisor. Rich should be on this podcast as well.
Awesome.
Can I have one more? Can I have one more?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I got one more guy. His name is Jimmy Curtin, and Jimmy is a sales guru. He understands sales front to back. And what I love about Jimmy is that his plan and management style for sales is very very much in congruence and lines up with what I've talked about today with regard to becoming an effective listener, understander, and communicator. So Jimmy Curtin, and I think he's in Flower Mound.
They sound great. No, thank you. I'm going to look them all up, and they sound perfect. So thanks for recommending them. Great. And then our final question is a little more of a fun one. I always love to hear people's backstories and where they came from. So tell us about your first job.
Oh my goodness. I mean, how far back do you want to go?
As far as you want.
I'm a real old guy.
You're fine.
You're not going to believe what my first job was. My first job was a corn pollinator.
Wow. That is, I have to say you're the first guest to give me that job.
I worked for an agricultural extension at a university in Louisiana, and they always had these experimental agricultural things that cut crops and things. And so they would hire a bunch of high school kids to come out and cross-pollinate corn. Don't even ask me how or why, but I did that for a summer one time, and it was the most miserable thing I've ever done in my life. And got 90 cents an hour. Wow.
Well, I'm sure it was a humbling experience, but also you learned a lot that you were able to implement later in life, I would hope.
A lot of bologna sandwiches.
Nice. Excellent. Well, thanks so much for sharing that. And how can people get a hold of you?
You can either call our office or go to our website. Our website is www.lifelanguages.com, or you can call our office at 972-406-1313. And just shoot me a text or an email or a phone call, and I'd be happy to talk to anybody. We're One of the hot buttons right now, and I don't know if we're about out of time, I know that, but one of the hot buttons right now that we're getting a lot of calls on is diversity, engagement, and inclusion officers are really using our tool to cross those bridges in the gaps that they're finding within their organizations, both culturally and ethnically and all of that stuff right now that's so important.
Yeah.
Anyway, we can help.
That's wonderful. No, that's great to hear. And we'll put that information in when we post this. So thank you for sharing.
Welcome. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, this is Anna Crowe with the Get Real podcast. For more insights, visit us at crowepr.com. Thanks so much and make it a great day.